good to see all of you this morning. We're here today to pause and show our gratitude to all our men and women who have so bravely served in our military. As former President George Bush said, throughout the course of American history, courageous men and women have taken up arms to secure, defend, and maintain those core principles upon which our nation's freedom depends. We want to thank all of you for your services and your sacrifices. I see a number of elected officials. Thank you. I see a number of elected officials in attendance today. Will all elected officials please stand and be recognized? Thank you all for coming. Now I'd like to recognize our Excel co-presidents, Carol King and Carla Jackson. Please stand. Thank you both for your leadership and continued support of our program here today. This year over in Hutchins Hall, you will be treated to a great military spray specific to the Vietnam War provided by Gene Jackson, retired DOT employee who served in the U.S. Army. And I also like to thank our program committee who work hard each year to put this program together, no exception this year, in appreciation of our employees. Those out front, as I call your name, please stand. Robert Quigley, Judy Mozick, Jeff Patelis, Bill Shelton, Harold Crisp, Carla Lario, Judy Humphreys, and the whole TV23 team. Let's give them a big round. We also want to thank those that assisted us in keeping this event free to our employees. So tremendous thanks also go to our sponsors who have made this possible. If anyone here is representing any of these fine organizations that continue to give back to the community, please stand as I call your name so we can show you our appreciation. Housing Associates. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Georgia. ICMA. Permanente, Georgia region. Again, thanks to our sponsors. We are honored today to welcome back my very good friend, radio personality Moby, who has graciously agreed to be our MC this morning and would be hurt if we didn't ask him to return. Moby, my friend, you're truly a great American. Thank you for all you do in the community. Moby. Yeah, baby.
Yeah, baby. I wouldn't be hurt. I'd be ticked off. I'd be mad. Couldn't stand it. Thank you, David. And it's good to be with you again. I don't know how many years I've done this event, but I would never not be here, and I would be hurt if I wasn't invited. So thank you again for letting an aging disc jockey do this. So I thank you, Mr. Hankson. And it is good to be in Cobb County, and it's great to be back with you again. Veterans Day. We've actually had two of them this year. We were celebrating Veterans Day on Friday on my show and again today on my show because on either side of the weekend, you know, 11/11 fell on Sunday this year, and I'm sure in churches all over the place we were acknowledging Veterans Day. But Veterans Day, in fact, was yesterday, and it is largely intended to thank living veterans for dedicated and loyal service to their country. November 11th of each year is the day set aside to ensure veterans know that we deeply appreciate the sacrifices they have made in their lives to keep the United States of America a free country. In 1947, Raymond Weeks out of Birmingham, Alabama, organized a Veterans Day parade on November 11th to honor all of America's veterans. Shortly thereafter, Congressman Edward Reese of Kansas introduced legislation to change the name of Armistice Day to Veterans Day in order to honor all veterans who've served the United States in all of our wars. In 1954, President Dwight Eisenhower signed a bill proclaiming November 11th as Veterans Day and called upon Americans everywhere to rededicate themselves to the cause of peace. And here we are today, a great nation of patriots. If you would please stand as Superior Court Judge Reuben Green, United States Marines, comes forward to deliver the invocation. And please remain standing for the presentation of the colors by the Cobb County Color Guard, the Pledge of Allegiance led by Bill Higgins from the United States Navy, from the Stormwater Division, and the National Anthem played by Solicitor Barry Morgan. Judge Green.
All right, good morning, everyone. Good morning, veterans, and happy Veterans Day today. It is an honor to be with you and to have the opportunity to give the invocation. Will you all pray with me, please? Our Heavenly Father, thank you for the men and women who have gone before us and for those who have and will follow us. Help us to appreciate that it is because of these men and women that we are able to gather, to pray, and to celebrate veterans of every branch of service. We ask, Lord, that you guide the leaders of our great country in all of their decisions. We ask that with your infinite wisdom, you guide them gently to the right decisions. Protect and guide our military, O Lord. Strengthen them in their trials. Give them courage to face the perils that they face, and grant them a sense of your abiding presence wherever they may be. Help these young soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines to understand that they are so much more than an individual, that they stand for the ideals of the United States of America wherever they go and whatever they do. Father, we also ask that you look out for their families as they too often endure times of separation. Lord, please keep them safe and help us to appreciate the incredible sacrifices that they make for us each and every day. God bless the United States of America and all who serve and protect her. Amen.
Thank you for your words of inspiration, Judge Green. Honor Guard, please post the colors.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Praise the Lord.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order. Ho!
Thank you. Be seated. Thank you all for participating this morning. As we gather here today to show our appreciation to those who served us all, I'm reminded of what President George W. Bush said in 2001, "We are a nation of patriots." The attacks of September 11th and attacks that have followed were designed to break our spirit, but instead they've created a new spirit in America. We have a renewed spirit of patriotism. We see it in the countless flags that are flying everywhere in America. We hear it in familiar phrases that move us more deeply than ever before. Now I invite you also, if you would be so kind, to stand when your military service is announced and its flag is presented. Play the tape.
The United States Army. The United States Navy. The United States Marines. The United States Coast Guard. The United States Air Force.
Military of these United States of America. Every time we do one of these, every time I'm involved in one of these ceremonies and they do the individual services, I'm always wanting to stand for the Coast Guard. My daddy was in the Coast Guard, and so damn few stand for that. Darn, sorry. But my brother-in-law was a 20-year veteran of the Coast Guard, and my daddy was in it, and you know, and it's always like me and one other coastie somewhere in the room. I remember at RMAC this year was exactly that. But may we never forget the strength of the United States military, your courage, your profound willingness to stand up and defend our way of life. Would you mind joining with me one time? Let's give all our veterans another great round of applause. You know, I say at every patriotic event I'm at, I don't think I've failed lately, in saying those of us like myself that did not serve this nation in uniform owe a debt that is almost impossible to repay to those that have, that did, and I thank you all from the bottom of my heart for your service to this nation. In the future, for my children, my grandchildren, all of you, thank you so much for your service. And now it's all volunteers. Again, this year, the committee invited employees to share their thoughts and experiences about their time serving our country. We want to thank you for sharing your stories with us. It is my pleasure to ask Air Force veteran Sharon Dorsey from the TAG office and Navy veteran William Tanks from the fire department to come forward to share some of those reflections. Ms. Dorsey.
My father left his country as a refugee from Cuba in an effort to escape communism and experience the freedom this country provided. I have spent multiple periods on active duty since 9/11, serving our country, and have been to countries I thought I would never see and experienced levels of adrenaline, stress, and change that I did not think was humanly possible as an operator and a trainer in this world of insurgencies and terrorism. Gil Padilla, Police Department.
My years of service and experience gave me the confidence to handle any situation in life with integrity, courage, and conviction, to handle every situation with a can-do attitude. Jamie Clint, and I work with the water system.
I followed in my father's footsteps and joined the Army in 1973. I served in Korea and Germany. Michael Parson, and I work at the water system.
In the Air Force, I learned order, discipline, and leadership. Daryl Priester, and I work at the water system.
While in the Navy, I served on both submarines and surface ships. I learned discipline and attention to detail in my work. I also learned to trust God in very fearful situations. James Vaughn from Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Affairs.
The Marine Corps allowed me to be proud of who I am, pride in my country, and building a spirit of corps. Prepared me for the future with life skills. It made me literally who I am today, Don Florence from the Extension Service.
In the Air Force, I grew up to some degree. It taught me independence and organizational skills. I also got to eat lobster for supper during boot camp. Greg Cloyer, and I work at the fire department.
I helped establish and operate a medical clinic on Camp Stryker in Baghdad to treat wounded soldiers. My proudest moment was at the end of tour in Iraq, and we managed to get all 125 soldiers back home. Greg Hawley from the police department.
My dad gave me 2 significant items the day I left home. I carried both into combat with me. One was a rather large switchblade, and the other a wooden token the size of a silver dollar. The token had a red cross inside a heart, and on the other side, in black, an inscription. I carry this cross in my pocket to remind me of who I can be if I take my cross and follow where my Savior leads me. I no longer have the switchblade. It was left in the Ashau Valley, Vietnam. But I still have the token. Both saved my life, and the token remains in my pocket today. Mike Nolan from the police department.
It was in 1974 that the Coast Guard allowed women to enlist for the first time. I joined in 1976. I was able to gain the respect of the men in my unit by working harder than others and quickly making rank. Carol Nicholson from the fire department.
My experiences in the Army took me from being a young man on the streets of New York City to being a real man that I can be proud of. My saddest day in the service was my final salute at my retirement after 20 years of service. Arthur Simmons from Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Affairs.
In my 22 years of service in the Army, I am most proud of teaching the Nigerian Army officers with whom the creation of the Nigerian Army Airborne School was accomplished in 1986. My military service laid the foundation for a life of public service. Philip Bradford from the police department.
I am proud because I served my country in the Army from 1984 to 1995 as a combat medic. Rob Finch from DOT.
I don't believe in luck. I prayed. My least favorite part of boot camp was the gas chamber. My time in the Army was made me a better person. Matthew Blackman from DOT.
I have served in both the Army and the Air Force. In 2003, my unit, the 802nd Ordnance Company, was part of the first wave to participate in the Iraqi Freedom Campaign. I was not sure I would be coming back home alive. We ran a lot of convoys in and out of Iraq and saw a lot of devastation. I am proud to be an American. Gary Pongetti from DOT.
In the Air Force, I participated in earthquake recovery operations in the Philippines, flew a baby with a skull fracture out of Alaska, worked recovery operations at Hurricane Opal, and delivered supplies to the forces fighting the communist insurgents in various parts of Central America. Kevin Barger from the District Attorney's Office.
My happiest moment in the Air Force was seeing the first flight of the wide F-22 fighter jet from my crash truck that I was driving at Dobbins Air Force Base. My experience as a senior airman gave me the skills and training for my job with Cobb Fire and Emergency Services. Corey Purcell.
As a young woman, I was adventurous, so I picked the Navy as my branch of service. I spent 20 years serving my country before retiring. The Navy gave me the discipline and training to make me the woman I am today. Sonia Scott Walker from the Police Department.
Through my travels and duties in the Air Force, I became fully aware of our greatness as a country and how the extraordinary is embodied in the ordinary. I never lose sight of how fortunate I am to be an American, and it was only by the luck of the draw. My name is Sharon Dorsey, and I'm in the Tax Commissioner's office.
I spent 4 years on active duty and served on the USS Nitro AE-23. Later, I joined the Navy Reserve and served until retirement in 2006. I am most proud of achieving the rank of Chief Petty Officer. This is a distinguished achievement and an honorable way to serve the country as a deck plate leader of young men and women that volunteer to serve in the United States Navy. My name is William Tanks, and I work with the Cobb County Fire Department.
Thanks to you both. I believe we were all educated a bit right then, William. We learned you were a young woman in the service. That was good. We also learned that in Navy boot camp, you got to eat lobster. In the Army, you got gas. Meaning, I'm assuming you eat beans in the Army. But thank you both, and thank you for your service as well. And you please give yourselves a round of applause and get it from us too. Honestly, folks, my tradition in the last few years has been at this event to share a poem/song that I had the honor of co-writing several years ago. It's called Holding the Flag for America. And if you will allow me a little personal privilege here, I can think of no better time than now to do it. I remember crying the night that Saigon fell. I remember Vietnam, yes, I remember well my roommate who died there and his friends in prison cells. They were holding the flag for America. My father told me stories of his days in World War II, of MacArthur in New Guinea and all the things he had to do, and he didn't see his baby girl till after she was 2. He was holding the flag for America. The world is always changing. The tyrants rise and fall. In Moscow, they got McDonald's now, and in Berlin, they tore down the wall. And I'd like to think that it's because a few of us stood tall holding the flag for America. A storm out in the Middle East underneath the desert sun, the diplomats had failed. So we had to use the gun, and all our sons and daughters, they did what must be done. They were holding the flag for America. A clear September morning, in the year 2001, pirates using our own planes thought they could make us run. But side by side, we shout with pride, we've only just begun holding the flag for America. And as we go about our lives, and as we stop to pray, we must preserve the way of life that brings us here today. For each and every one of us in our own special way is holding the flag for America. Yes, each and every one of us in our own special way is holding the flag for America. Thank you. And we are. Now it is my distinct pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker this morning, Admiral James O. Ellis, Jr. And I was talking to him earlier, Jim Ellis, and he did buy a car from the Jim Ellis dealership. He's got his name on the frame around his license plate in the back. But in 2004, Admiral Ellis completed a distinguished 39-year Navy career as commander of the United States Strategic Command. In this role, he was responsible for the global command and control of United States strategic and space forces, reporting directly to the Secretary of Defense. After graduating from Marietta High School, Mr. Ellis attended the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis in 1969. He then went on to complete a master's degree in aerospace engineering from Georgia Tech in 1970. In 2005, he was inducted into the school's Engineering Hall of Fame. Mr. Ellis followed in his father's footsteps to become a pilot in the Navy. Got those wings. He was designated a naval aviator in 71. His service as a Navy fighter pilot included tours with 2 fighter squadrons, an assignment as commanding officer of an FA-18 Strike Fighter Squadron. In 1991, he assumed command of the USS Abraham Lincoln, a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, which he describes as the most fun job he ever had. After selection to Rear Admiral in 1996, he served as a Carrier Battle Group commander, leading contingency response operations in the Taiwan Straits. His personal awards include the Defense Distinguished Service Medal, Navy Distinguished Service Medal, the Legion of Merit, Defense Meritorious Service Medal, and the Navy Commendation Medal, as well as numerous campaign and service awards. In 2005, Mr. Ellis was elected President and Chief Executive Officer of the Institute of Nuclear Power Operations located in Atlanta. And currently he serves on the Board of Directors of the Lockheed Martin Corporation. Admiral Ellis was also the Grand Marshal of the Kiwanis Veterans Parade this past Saturday in Marietta. Please make welcome an American, God bless him, Admiral Ellis. Will you please come to the stage?
Thank you all. Thank you all. It's a tremendous honor for me to have some small part in this great event today. And for those of you that were on the square on Saturday, don't worry, it's not the same speech. All right, so you don't have to worry about that. I particularly appreciated what Sharon and Willie had to say about all of you, the veterans out there who, in ways large and small, served the nation in years past, but in an ironic sense of destiny, you still serve. You are now serving your neighbors. You're serving this community in this county. And one of the things that I'm proudest of is the fact that there's a commitment that some of us have to serving. It begins perhaps with your military service and the armed forces of this great nation. But we also find a way to continue that service. Even if we pursue other careers, we find ways to give back and to be a part of something special and larger than ourselves, and that all comes down to service. So what I'd like to talk about today, very briefly, is not about what I did in the Navy. because as you could tell from Moby's introduction, it would tell you two things about me. First, that I'm old, and second, that I certainly can't hold a job. But those 39 years were something that shaped me as an individual. And as I said on the square on Saturday, it doesn't matter whether you serve for 3 years or whether you serve for 30 years. If you served in the armed forces of the United States, if you wore, as I say, the cloth of the nation, it changes you. And you are a better citizen as a result. And as so many of you have found, you find ways to continue to serve going forward. So Harry Truman talked about leadership, and from my perspective, what I learned most from my military service, as so many of you said in those remarks that Sharon and Willie read, was the importance of leadership and the challenges that it brings, and how initially, as you're young and impressionable, you observe leaders, you are led, and then as you rise and acquire seniority and experience and expertise, you become a leader yourself. What I'm going to say today is based on my experiences. My experiences are no better than yours. Those experiences you had, the things that you learned, are equally important to you as what I've learned is to me. So please don't misunderstand. I'm not here to pontificate. I'm not here to tell you how it ought to be or anything. I'm telling you the lessons that I learned through 39 years of naval service. But Harry Truman, he'd have to change that a little bit today, and appropriately so, talked about the importance of leadership. And I think that's the one thing that most of us took from our military service, even though I fairly acknowledge that in order to be a leader, in order to contribute to this nation, you don't have to wear the uniform. Not all patriots are in uniform. But those of us that served appreciated that, the importance of leadership, and it helped shape our own style and our own approach to leadership going forward. But you can see that where there is no leadership, society stands still. Progress occurs when courageous, skillful leaders seize the opportunity to change things for the better. This afternoon, this morning, I'm going to talk very, very briefly. 7 observations, 7 characteristics, and there is time. I'll be glad to take any questions. I know there's a great lunch awaiting, so I don't think there'll be many questions. But let me tell you some assumptions. I once worked for a guy who was pretty demanding. I was a direct report to Donald Rumsfeld, and he did not suffer fools gladly. And you better have your act together when you come to talk to him. And it became very important to me to have some ideas of what are the assumptions, and that was Rumsfeld's approach. You bring him a plan. He never even looked at the plan. He said the plan is on autopilot. It's just a black box. You turn the crank, it happens. But what he always questioned were the assumptions on which that plan was based. And so that's where the critical flaws would always emerge. So these are the assumptions, if you will, on which I base my discussions of leadership that I learned from my time in the service. And as I mentioned, I suspect that many of you learned similar lessons along the way. The first is that leadership is not management. Okay? And this does not disparage the value of management. You need management processes, but I would argue that while you manage things, budgets, schedules, programs, projects, and the like, if there are human beings involved, you lead people. Okay? You don't manage them, you lead them. When I was a young test pilot, I worked with a flight test engineer who was on the cutting edge of what were then the new remotely piloted vehicles, airplanes that did not have pilots in them. And as a result of that, I was a bit concerned, of course, because he didn't think very highly of pilots, and I was one. Right? But he described pilots as programmable, nonlinear servo mechanisms that can be produced cheaply in 9 months by unskilled labor. That's how he described pilots. Well, I would argue that if you think of people as those kinds of robots or automatons or something, you've got it wrong. And if you try and manage people in the classic sense without an understanding of the individual's needs, their goals, their objectives, their cares, and all of that, you're going to miss the mark. And so the lesson for me in my military service was that while you need both leadership and management, the two are not the same, and we should not use those terms interchangeably. The second point is it's a full contact sport, okay? And that means you're going to get bruised and you're going to get bloodied. If you've been in a leadership role at all, you've made a mistake along the way. 35 years later, I can look back on things and kind of say, boy, I sure didn't do that well. But I picked myself up, dusted myself off, learned something from it, and moved forward. So don't expect perfection is the message in all of that. If you're a leader, you're going to make mistakes. Own up to them. Admit them. Your people will respect you for it, and then move on. The second point is you're already in the game as a leader. I mean, how many of you came into the job that you're in right now saying, I want to be a leader? See, none of us did. But leadership comes to you. It comes to you whether you seek it or not. Because you do your job better than anyone else, and people begin to look to you for the insights. Where the person ahead of you retires, and all of a sudden you get promoted into the job. Leadership, sometimes, you know, you're part of a team and you say, yeah, I do want to lead this team someday, and you aspire to that, and there's nothing wrong with that. But my point is that leadership comes to you. You don't always have to seek it, and you need to be ready to assume it when it comes because people rely on you. There is no single leadership style. Most of us remember the great George C. Scott movie, Patton, where he stands on those steps in the chrome helmet and bellows, and some people have that stereotypic view that that's military leadership or leadership at its best. It is not, okay? That's not what leadership is all about. There are as many leadership styles as there are people in this room. Now, most of us have observed leaders, we've seen leaders that we respect, we grab some of their traits or their techniques, and we make them our own, and that's fine. And when I say there is no single leadership style, I really would like to contradict myself. There is a single leadership style, and it's yours. And if you do it well, it's going to work. The second point is, or the next point is, leadership is always situational. You have to adjust your leadership style depending on the situation in which you find yourself. Now, some people we know will say, hey, that's just the way I am, I treat everybody lousy. Okay, that's not an optimum leadership technique. You need to appreciate when somebody's having a bad day. You need to be able to modify depending on the situation, the approach that you might take. Sometimes direct engagement is the right way. Sometimes you need to work it a little bit more indirectly. All of us do that instinctively anyway. If you're in a leadership role, you don't talk in quite the same way to the folks that report to you as you talk to your boss or you talk to your colleagues. So we have that capability, and we need to be able to change it. One of the lessons that I learned in my time in the Navy was the importance of situational leadership. Anybody ever hear of a guy named Stephen Covey? All right, yeah, some of you may have read some of his work, 7 Habits and all that stuff. Covey called me one day and asked me to write a chapter in a book with him. And the title of the book was called The Nature of Leadership, and it was supposed to be leadership lessons that you learned from nature. It was not a big seller, okay? I think there are 3 copies. I've got one, Covey's got one, and I think there's probably one in the Library of Congress, but that's it, you know. But the tale that I told dealt with a time when I was the commanding officer of the nuclear aircraft carrier. I mean, the way I would describe those ships, if you haven't sailed or seen them, it's, you know, just your average small town, built underneath an international airport on top of 2 nuclear reactors that cruises 75% of the Earth's surface at something greater than 30 knots. It's a big ship, okay? 1,092 feet long, to be specific, and 100,000 tons. But, as big as it was, if you drove that ship into building seas, 20, 25 feet and the like, it would pound unmercifully. It would rip pieces of metal off the side of the ship. It would cause the airplanes that are tied down with 18 chains to break loose on the deck and roll around and careen into other things, damaging extremely valuable government property. But I found by experimentation, if you altered the course 10 degrees to one side or the other of the seas, the pounding stopped immediately. You could actually not only maintain your speed, you could actually accelerate. And so by kind of a zigzag, you could get to the same destination, you get there at the same amount of time, you didn't damage anything along the way. And so that was the story that I told Covey, and his interpretation of that was a leadership technique where sometimes you have to modify your approach slightly. You don't compromise your principles, your ultimate objective, but you may have to modify your approach in order to get where you want to get to with the whole organization intact and supportive and still combat effective. So that's what I mean when I say it's always situational. The next point is obvious. Leadership is either good or bad. You say, well, maybe it's not so obvious. Some people believe there's such a thing as neutral leadership. I don't. If there is no leadership, if it's neutral, then there's a vacuum. And people do not understand what's expected of them. They don't understand the standards. They don't understand the objectives. They don't understand where I'm trying to go. And so my view is it's bipolar leadership is. It's either good or it's bad. Anybody in here ever worked for a bad leader? Present company accepted, of course, all right? I think we all have at some point in our career, either in the military. I mean, you see it in experience. I once worked for a guy, in fact, I was his executive officer, the number 2. And he had 3 favorite sayings that he would use in groups like this, as a matter of fact. The first was, when I want your opinion, I will give it to you. The second expression he would use was, what good is power if I can't abuse it? And the third one, and my favorite, was, when the king is unhappy, one of the little people must die. Well, needless to say, in that organization, I was a hero because I wasn't him, you know. But my point here is it's either good or bad. There's no such thing as neutral leadership. You learn from the bad experiences and you emulate the good ones, and again, you make your own leadership style. The next one is you never stop learning. I mean, it's not over. I mean, there are no pearls of wisdom dribbling from my lips. Every day that I meet and interact with people, no matter what their role is or where they are positioned in an organization or what their responsibilities are, I continue to learn from folks that I admire, and I think that's important. And what that message is for us is sometimes you have to stretch yourself a bit. Sometimes you have to take the job that nobody else wants. Sometimes you have to volunteer to be part of a special group, to plan an event like this, like Judy did, or in her team, and all of that. And you learn from those kinds of experiences as a result. So don't stop learning is the message in all of that. And then the final piece that I learned from my time in the Navy is that, you know, in the final analysis, I didn't do anything. It's all the people in the organizations that I was a part of that got me to where I was. As a young test pilot, coming out of my first fighter squadron and a tour in Vietnam, I was a pretty cocky and arrogant guy. You say, oh no, you know. Well, and I was doing a test flight one day at Pax River, and it had gone very well. And I came back, and I was in maintenance control signing in the airplane. And I was a young lieutenant, and I was kind of feeling my oats, and I said, you know, this went well, and I did this, and I did that. And there was a chief petty officer, an ADR. You probably aren't old enough to remember what that was. That was a reciprocating engine mechanic. We don't even have reciprocating engines anymore. He was behind the counter in maintenance control, and he said, Lieutenant, can I talk to you a moment? And we went to a quiet part of the hangar, and he said, Lieutenant, he said, I know you did a good job today, and I know you worked hard. He said, but you need to remember that people are watching you. And everything you earned today and will earn throughout your Navy career, you earned off the sweat of some sailor's back. That fundamentally changed my perception. And I no longer thought of myself as the guy that everyone was supporting. I thought of my role going forward as kind of taking that pyramid that all organizations have, where you've got, you know, the leader at the top and the you know, you've seen it in the wiring diagrams, the organizational charts and the like. And what we need to do is turn that upside down. And your job as a leader, I found, is to support the people that are working for you, to give them the training they need, to give them the support they need, to give them the encouragement they need, to give them the resources that they need to accomplish the job, and yes, occasionally, to support them when they make a mistake. Because if it's an honest human error, that too is part of your responsibility as a leader. So your job is not to sit in the corner office with an inbox and an outbox where people kind of walk into your office, genuflect, and put the sacrificial offering in one box, and then come over and take out the box and back out so as not to show disrespect by turning their back. That's not leadership, okay? If you are at the top of the pyramid ought to be on its head, and you ought to be supporting the folks that are making it possible for you and your organization to succeed. So that's my leadership observations. People say, well, what's this all about? How do you measure leadership? And you know, you've got as many standards and expectations, and you know what good looks like. So I'm not going to stand here and tell you that. But over the years, when I get asked that question, I kind of put together a cute little series of letters here, and I call it the 7 C's. You get it? It's a nice play on my Navy experience, okay? You know, hey, come on, all right? But first of these are things that I look for in organizations. I look for in groups that I'm going to be a part of. I look for when I was hiring people to join my organization and the like. And I won't go through in agonizing detail, but the first is commitment. Okay? Progress and growth is an important part of our lives, and we need to understand what our objectives are and what we'd like to do next and all of that. But for the time you are a part of it, you have to be fully committed to the organization that you serve. That's got to be the be-all, end-all. It's not that you ignore the possibility of a promotion or another job, but that can't be. You can't be seen as a placeholder, just marking time, waiting for a better offer. How many of you have ever been to a cocktail party where you're standing there talking to somebody and you realize that they're looking over their shoulder, over your shoulder, to see if somebody more important, or in my case, better looking, just came in the room, okay? They're not committed to that conversation. If you want to be part of an organization, be committed. Be committed. Second point is you got to be really competent. You got to be good at what you do. Not just the technical piece of it, but the personal interactions, the leadership skills, all of the things that you know are going to be essential to getting it done and doing it right. And I learned that early on. There's a whole raft of skills that you have and you have to develop if you aspire to continue to grow and serve in your organization. The next thing you need is credibility. Well, you said, wait a minute, you just talked about competence. Isn't that the same thing? No, 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 no. Competence is what you are. Credibility is what people think you are. How do they view you? Are you viewed as an authority? Do people respect you in your judgment? Do you actually walk the walk? Or do you just talk about it? That's where credibility comes in. The next point is you've got to be able to communicate what you need. I mean, people will do things for you that are absolutely amazing if you can make it clear what you need and why you need it and when you need it. And we underestimate sometimes the power of that level of communication. This sounds a bit strange coming from a 39-year military guy, but a good leader has to have an element of compassion in what he or she does. At some point in your career, you're going to deliver bad news. You're going to let people know that their performance is not up to standards. You're going to let them know that, quite frankly, in some cases, that they're no longer going to have a job in the organization. And how you deliver that and allow them to keep their self-respect is hugely important from a leadership perspective. And I learned that early on. Moby mentioned that I commanded an F-18 squadron. It was the first F-18 squadron in the Navy. It was comprised of A players. And I was a commander, that's an 05, and there were 4 lieutenant commanders that worked for me. And it came time to do the annual evaluation. I don't know how yours works, but in the Navy in those days, you didn't have any wiggle room. You ranked them 1 to 4, okay? And they were stars in the organization before they came to this brand new squadron flying this brand new airplane. And so, but I had to have a conversation with each of them. Well, having a conversation with number 1 was pretty easy, don't you imagine? Yeah. Actually, the toughest one was number 2, because guess what? He thought he was number 1, all right? Yeah. Number 3 was okay, but the hardest one was number 4. And, you know, you come in and you sit him down and you talk about, you know, what a great job he's done and the contributions he's made to the organization and all of that, but explain this. And, you know, I'd agonized over this for weeks. And about halfway through the conversation, the young officer held up his hand and said, "Skipper," he says, "I know those guys. Aren't they great? And isn't what they're doing for our squadron great?" And so it kind of made me understand that, you know, if you approach things with a sense of compassion, if you let people know honestly what you're thinking, but do it while their self-respect is intact, that's an important dimension of leadership. The next one is courage. Now you're going to think, oh yeah, he's going to tell us some story about booming off the catapult on a dark night and heading for Vietnam with a plane load of bombs. I'm not. Okay. Let me tell you the courage that was most impressive to me. When I was captain of the aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln, we were headed for Desert Storm. I mean, this is serious business, folks. You know, and I had some compassion, but I had a crew of 6,000 people. And inevitably, in a group that large, somebody gets into trouble. And I put the rules out. People knew what the standards were. You know, you get 1 strike, okay? But if you come back to me in front of captain's mast and you've done the same thing a second time, I'm sorry. I got 5,999 folks that need my full attention. I'm going to allow you to pursue another line of work, and you're going to leave the Navy. You're going to be administratively discharged. That was the policy. It was widely known, promulgated, and all of that, and it worked fine. Except one day after captain's mast, where I had a 2-time offender come in, and I dismissed him and said, "You're going to be processed for administrative separation." I'm back on the bridge, 17 floors up on the aircraft carrier, No elevators to walk that distance to get that. You walk up ladders all the way, steep stairs in reality. And I was in the at-sea cabin behind the bridge briefly, and there was a knock at the door. I opened the door, and there stood a chief petty officer, who was the division chief petty officer for this young man that I had just said was going to be cashiered from the Navy because he had done the same thing, the same offense for a second time. And the chief petty officer proceeded to explain to me, Skipper, he said, I believe I'm getting through to this young man. I believe I'm making a difference. I want to get an exception to your policy, and I want to keep this kid. Now that is courage. Because he could have just said, hey, rules is rules, kid. You know, you did it, you knew the rules, you broke them, you're gone. But he didn't. He had the courage to come all the way up in the middle of the night and knock on the door and ask for an exception to my standing policy on discipline. That's the kind of leadership courage that I like to talk about. And then the final piece here, and it's important, and I stole it from baseball because I believe in the concept, and quite frankly, I needed a C. There are a lot of folks out there that are great strategic planners. They've got binders full of strategic plans and PowerPoints and all the rest of that. They can talk a great game. They can tell you what everybody else is going to do to get it done. But you know, in the end, you need people that can deliver. You need closers. You need people that can actually make things happen in your organization, okay? It's wonderful to talk about it, it's wonderful to debate it, it's wonderful to consider it, it's wonderful to rewrite and rescrub and restructure plans, but at some point, you need to make a decision and you need to get on with it. So anyway, these are my 7 C's. You can have 5 M's for Marietta, it doesn't matter. But think about what's important to you in your leadership roles, in the roles that you can and will occupy going forward, and think about that. And oh, by the way, I mentioned that I used this in deciding whether I was going to join an organization or whether I was going to hire somebody. This is also not a bad set of things to put on a 3x5 card and tuck in the bottom of quadrant of my mirror as I look in every day, every morning when I shave and say, okay, Jim, so how are you doing in each of these things? And it's a great cross-check on ourselves. How are you doing as a leader? You'll know. I mean, we say, gee, nobody told me. Come on. If you walk into the room and the laughter stops, that's probably not good. If you're leading the team and they have to draft people to be a member of it, that's probably not good, okay? So, you know, be honest with yourself. You know how you're doing, and the question is, what are you going to do about it? This sounds very complex. Winston Churchill's a great source of quotes, and I love this one. Out of intense complexities, intense simplicities emerge. What he's saying is, this isn't as complex as you think it is, and he's right. I prefer Ronald Reagan's quote, not because of political dimensions, but just because he was fond of saying, there are simple answers. There are just no easy answers. And in leadership, that's often the case. But you know, as you talk about it, as you think about it, you know, don't make it harder than it needs to be. Don't sit there and jot down notes on what I said and try and remember them. Use your own instincts, your own leadership style, your own skills that you've acquired from your time in service, whether it's in service to this nation in uniform or services to the community in the role that you now occupy. And if you're looking for a quote, I'll give you one more, and it's not from Winston Churchill or Ronald Reagan. It's from the guy that's standing here holding the mic. And when all else fails, when you're really in a quandary as to what to do, the simple thing is, you do the right thing, and you do it now. Thank you very much.
You know, can I tell you something? I have got a cold, and I feel like warmed over dog dookie, and I almost called David Hankson and Judy Humphrey and said, I'm just not up to it today. Your speech made me so happy I didn't do that. And I told the Admiral as he approached the stage, I hadn't read his introduction yet. I was learning this as you learned it. And as he came to the stage, he shook his hand and said, we got some mutual friends. I want to talk to you. And indeed, I was right. I wasn't not paying attention. I was listening to every word you said, but I was texting my good friend, Captain Craig Badrod Weideman, Navy aviator. Oh, yeah, I know you know that. How about Admiral Timbo Keating? I know you do. I knew you had to. And you said something else, I thought. You're talking about Truman. General Ray Davis, Marine, had these young Marines. And what a great leader. And these young Marines loved that man. They would have any moment died for that man. And I was emceeing an event very much like this, and he had his Medal of Honor on. And I said, General Davis, I said, I've never touched one. May I touch your Medal of Honor? He said, well, yeah, fat boy, but don't rub Truman's fingerprints off of it. Yeah, but I mean, I'll tell you, we've got some good friends, and I'm sure a lot of these stories that we can tell together have a lot to do with drinking beer. Have to. So I texted Badrod. I said, Admiral Jim Ellis, F-18 pilot, know him? He texts back, God knows where he's in Virginia Beach right now teaching F-18 simulators. And he writes back, yep. I said, keynote speaker at the event I'm emceeing right this minute. Call me when you can, he said. And I said, right after this event, okay? I said, okay. I wrote back and said, do we like him? And then it was a long time before he got, yep, a good guy. I think that's just great. And so now that I've said all that, I want to say it's what a pleasure and an honor to meet you, sir. And I would really like to sit down and have a glass of sweet tea with you when we get home. But it has, I mean, what an understatement to say this has been a pleasure. All of us truly appreciate you being here. I'm sure Mr. Hankerson learned some leadership things from, where'd he go? There he is. No, I know people that know you too, David. You're a great guy. But David Hankerson and the co-presidents of the XL alumni want to officially say thanks and for being a part of Cobb County's annual Veterans Appreciation Program. Another great leader, David Hankerson. David?
Admiral Ellis, it truly is a great pleasure to meet you, and certainly want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with us today. And you have truly made this a special program for our employees. And as a small token of our appreciation, we want to say thank you and appreciate all you do. Thanks so much. Thank you.
That was fabulous. Man, oh man. What a great event. It's been a great day in Cobb County. Tell you something else, Admiral, when I was coming to the stage after your talk there, I said, Admiral, stand fast if you'd be so kind. And a man that's wearing stars on his shoulders for, a knock-kneed fat boy to say, stand still, big guy. That 8C could have been Curly. Hey, it's a ball joke. I had the honor one time of emceeing an event that flew the Enola Gay. His name was General? Flew the Enola Gay, bombed Hiroshima. Tibbetts, Paul Tibbetts. There's a test, you passed, thank you. General Tibbetts, little bitty fella, he was emceeing this, he was keynote speaker as you were today at this event. And at the end of it, it was the city of Roswell, and there's memorial bricks that go on a memorial walk around the faces of war memorial. And I stood up with his brick, had his name on it, and I said, General Tibbetts, if you'd be so kind, would you please approach the podium again? And bless his little, at this time, he was still, obviously, still very much alive, and God, what a great man. He walked up to the podium, and took his brick in his hand and said, when a man that size picks up a brick and says he's got something for you, you don't really know what to expect. Oh, Lord, great day in Cobb County. I am so very proud to be part of this event each year, to show tribute to these fine veterans, each and every one, from the people that are the basis of that pyramid we just learned about, the pyramid turned upside down, at the very top, the very least. I understand that. God bless you for that. Their devotion to duty is something that only great leaders understand, that on the smallest and the most menial of jobs in these United States military, the smallest and most menial are many times the most important. And the real leaders understand that. I'm sure those of you who were here last year will remember the moving performance of Amazing Grace by Mr. Ravender, assistant band director at J.J. Daniel Middle School. We're delighted that he has turned that off. We're delighted that he is with us again this year to perform Amazing Grace. Mr. Durr. Man, I tell you, Mr. Durr, let me tell you, you know how earlier today I said if they didn't bite me, I'd be hurt? Me and you, we're a team. Me and you. Dang. Gosh, that was great. Wow. How many of you cried? Woo. God, thank you, Mr. Durr. Thank you so much for that inspirational performance. And now we'll bring to the stage, if you would please stand, as Navy veteran District Attorney Pat Head comes forward to deliver the benediction, and then remain standing for echoing taps by Lieutenant Ken Davis from the Sheriff's Office and Detective Sergeant R.J. Peluso with the Police Department. Head.
You know, this is not part of the program, but I think we owe him one more round of applause. That moves me. If you would, pray with me. Dear Father God, we thank you for your great blessings and the incredible gift that you gave us all to be able to live in this great nation. We thank you for the freedom to gather here in this place openly. We thank you for the freedom that we have to openly oppose the leadership of our government without fear of arrest and persecution. And we thank you that those who have a different viewpoint from ours have also been afforded that same freedom. Father God, we especially thank you today for the men and women who have served this country so that we can have those freedoms, and for the sacrifices they have made. For those who made it home and are still among us, we ask your blessings. For those who gave their lives so that we might live free, we ask that you receive them into your loving arms and grant them eternal joy and peace. And Lord, as we leave this place, we ask that you would gently remind us that we have only been able to become what we are by your grace. And we ask that you would touch the hearts and minds of every citizen of this land so that we could once again truly be one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In your holy name I pray. Amen. Amen.
Thank you all for coming. I want to take a moment just to say to Judy Humphreys, Judy, good job this year. And yes, please, applause for Judy. We hope that each and every one of you will be able to join us in the Hudgens Hall for lunch and enjoy Mr. Tatum's military display. Admiral, again, thank you so much for that inspiring talk. And don't forget to thank our sponsors. Now, we're adjourned to the hall. God bless you all. God bless America. Have a wonderful day.